Hello, everyone. We're going to discuss Therapeutic Society and the pursuit of happiness. The story and the video I wanted to tell you and show you is the story of a MAPA breach. Maybe some of you know, it's a quite well-known story, what happened in this breach. So MAPA breach is a breach in South Korea, and it's famous because of the great amount of suicides that was committed this breach. And South Korea authorities decided to organize a campaign to prevent suicide accidents. And the problem was that, well, it's basically, spoiler, it's kind of failed. But campaign was great. The idea was to turn MAPO, which was called among people in South Korea, which was called the breach of death, into the breach of life. So to turn it into the therapeutic, life-affirming, positive space. And for this, they created environment. You'll see it in a video. It was a great campaign. It involved Samsung Life Insurance, for example, company. And it involved professional psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers who work within the field of prevention of suicides. And just to show you a video how it looked like, it lasts, I think, 3 minutes.
양말을 좀 높게 해가지고 그래가지고 사람들이 올라가기 힘들게.
해가지면 수행 못하게 하는 게 낫지 않나요? 고정관을 설치한 거예요.
But rather than trying to hinder people from taking their lives, we wanted to change their minds about it. A simple light is where our idea began. We wanted to light up each step as people walked by, surprise them, and bring them joy. We went to the bridge and walked on it to see for ourselves. We wanted to connect with people on eye level, so we started to create sensors that reacted to people as they walked by. We wanted this bridge of life to start a conversation with people, sometimes with a simple greeting, or with words of wisdom, or with a silly joke that would move their hearts. And where the conversation ends, we set up bronze statues of two friends, where one is patting the other on his back and pinching his cheek.
아이가 다정하게 많은 것이 이렇게 되게 말을 거는 듯한 물질들로 극단적인 선택을 피할 수 있게 도와줍니다. 거기 문제였어요.
이게 재밌는 게요. 인턴이 시작하는지 몰라가지고.
A small first step by Samsung Life Insurance to save lives, to give a new home, to share a new dream, to encourage and inspire. Even at this very moment, the bridge of life is speaking to someone. Human love, Samsung Life Insurance.
And with all the effort, it not only didn't work, but the amount of, since the campaign started, the amount of suicides increased drastically. And for me, MAPA breach is more or less a representation of our society, how it works, with the demand of being positive, with the demand of being healed. And the breach of the MAPA breach is kind of this, metaphorically, the breach through which we try to connect to each other, because this was made in the name of love, right? Love to people, taking care of people, saving their lives. But maybe somehow we're doing it wrong by trying to do it through affirmation, through demanding of positivity, something that is called toxic positivity for this precise reason. And somehow it might not work. And not only it might not work, but it might work in an opposite way we actually want it to be. So my problem and my question here, maybe we're doing it wrong. And in not only with Mappa Bridge, but with the society as such. Because with the demand to be happy, to look on the bright side of life, maybe this just doesn't work, and maybe it might work in precisely the opposite ways to increase our suffering even. And we know this from this statement. We know it from science, we know it from psychology, we know it from pop psychology, that there is, we feel it, that there is this demand to be happy, the demand that we shouldn't suffer ideally. And that's the goal of society, the political goal as well, is presented as the eradication of suffering and increase of positivity, and which is associated with health and of happiness. And this is David Pearce. He's transhumanist, and this is how he envisions the future of society, where every creature is going to be happy, where there is going to be no suffering anymore. And this is more or less how we see the goal of science and the goal of psychotherapy in our society, and the goal of people relating to each other. It's supposed to make us happy. But as we saw with Mappa Bridge, it might not only not work, but it might work in a completely opposite direction. So the problem is that even with this demand, when we want to reduce suffering, when we want to increase happiness, and science is developing and going to this direction, the problem is that still the level of anxiety and the level of depression grows in spite of that. So even before pandemic started, and now we have objective reason to be anxious. But even before that, it didn't work. So the idea that science have to work to increase happiness and to reduce suffering, it didn't work because the suffering was increasing all the time. And even during the pandemic, when it's very hard to look at the bright side of life, psychiatrists still demand to claim that it's a function of psychiatrists to increase patient happiness. So there is still this idea that we need to work on flourishment of happiness. Alenka Zupancic, you know her from previous lectures, the one who claimed that today's society is society of biomorality that demands us to be positive and to not to pay attention to a negative, or if something negative happens, if we have some negative emotions, we have to transform them into something positive. And this is the demand, oppressive demand of society that we exist in. And there is morality behind it, since people who are happy are considered, or who look happy, who look positive, are considered to be healthy, and those who are not happy, who are suffering, are considered to be evil. So the anti-hero of our time. And if you feel depressed, if you feel sad, someone will tell you to just be happy or be positive, not to pay attention to your suffering, to increase your suffering, increase your positive mood, change your mood. And for Zupancic, this biomorality that promotes positivity, it creates, because of this morality, we exist in our own gulag. Because since depression and suffering are stigmatized, when we feel depressed, and we do feel depressed, and this process is increasing, we kind of punish ourselves even more for feeling that way, because we don't coincide with this moral ideal. So not only we suffering, we feel bad, but also we are punishing ourselves because we are suffering. So it's like this process increases suffering. And the opposite process, so over-evaluation of happiness in our society, and the fact that negative feelings are stigmatized, they kind of go together and create this gulag of suffering. And here, this idea of our internal positive gulag was confirmed by several research findings. One of them is happy room experiment conducted by Lucy McGurk and her colleagues in 2018. So what they did, they invited participants and asked them to do tasks that it's impossible to do. So some gave participant tasks that are impossible to do, to give correct answers to, meaning that they will ruminate, they'll have bad feelings about failing the task. They separated those participants in several rooms, and one room was normal, neutral room, and the other room was the happy room. The happy room imposed the idea of positivity. So it basically represented the model of our society that demands to be happy, that overly relies on the idea, on the demand of positivity and stigmatizes negative feelings. And they wanted to check how participants in both rooms will react on their failure. Which one of those participants will be more sad? And examiner greeted participants, and this is the quote of what he told them. So inside the room there were posters. This is the example of a poster about happiness, self-help books, how to be happy, stickers, motivational stickers, and stuff like that. And the experimenter pretended that they have to complete this experiment in his room. He said that this is the room where he was preparing for the exams, and those books, something his mother gave him those books, and they helped him a lot while preparing the exam. And there is like no use at all to feel stressed or overwhelmed. Just need to get rid of all the negativity and stay happy. And so everything in this room, posters, books, and examinator, was imposing the idea that happiness is good, the demand to be happy. And it turned out that participants, so the idea of gulag was basically confirmed, because participants who performed poorly, and all of them performed poorly because tasks were unsolvable, they were much more unhappy because they ruminated much more on their failure, and then they concentrated more on negative feelings. So it works in a paradoxical way. The demand to be happy might increase our unhappiness. And this is their conclusion, that ironically, our happy-oriented culture might be the source of our unhappiness. So this is great. Those findings are great. Now we know this paradoxical principle. But the problem with this study is that at the very beginning, they proclaim, Lucy McGuirk and her colleagues, they claim that one thing is clear, it's good to be happy. So they don't doubt the very idea that it's good to be happy, because it's not philosophical paper, it's actual research, and it wasn't their goal, but still. So there is still, even after this research is done, and after there is this understanding, they don't doubt the very idea that we have to be happy, that happy means good, that this is the goal we need to follow. And the other funny thing is that right after the findings of this research were published, Psychology Today published a psychological paper based on those research findings of McGurk, and they basically reinscribed this paper and these findings into the recommendation how to be happy. So according to this paper, it's weirdly enough, to be happy, you don't have to concentrate on happiness. And this is even crazier, right, than just the absence of demand to be happy. So there is still this demand, but you kind of include the negativity in it. And it's still inscribed within the demand of being happy, just you include the negativity, you don't have to think about happiness. And it might be even more confusing than gulag, meaning even worse than gulag because it's more confusing. At least in gulag you suffer, and then you double suffer, and here you're confused. And not only not only on the level of psychology, there is this implicit demand to be happy, even if one criticizes demand to be happy, but also in quite progressive research and philosophy research. For example, in this book, Smile or Die, quite famous one, that criticizes toxic positivity and capitalistic society that has this demand for people to be happy, to smile to each other, but for real, just making this demand just makes them convenient. For example, you have to smile to your boss, you have to be happy, always satisfied, never depressed. So it's kind of makes you part of the capitalist society, which is unhuman, but you just look human because you smile. And it makes you a part of this machine that exploits you. So she criticizes it, but she still has this idea that she still needs to justify herself, that she's doing it in the name of happiness. That maybe in the future, not this happiness, not pretend happiness, but we'll get to the real happiness, to more smile. And one will reveal kind of more laughter, more happiness once we get rid of this fake smiles. And this is still the problem. When people criticize the demand to be happy, they still kind of demand others to be happy. They still don't doubt the equation of demand to be of happiness and of a healthy human, or human the way they're supposed to be. And even more, this is actually a great paper of Revolution in Happiness. And I really like the intention here. The intention that we shouldn't concentrate on our individual happiness, but more on the happiness of society. But it's still, for me, it's kind of not enough. Here you have to sacrifice a part of your individual happiness, part of you, of egoistic you, you the way you are created by capitalist society. And in that way, you will create potentially happy society. Society that will be happy collectively. But it's still, for me, it's not enough, because I doubt this idea of collective happiness. I think it's also might work in the same way. The demand to be happy collectively might work in the same way, like with Mappa Bridge, but on a more, but on a larger scale, potentially. And maybe it's not possible. With Mappa Bridge, they also wanted to make other people happy. So collective people, several people who wanted to commit suicide, to turn them into happy people, and people together, if you put them together, they create society, right? What is happening? Okay. So this idea might not work, I think. And so why, let's think, why this demand to be happy, why the idea of a healthy psyche, of a healthy human is equal to us in conventional thinking to the healthy psyche. So why there is this equation of happiness and health, of happiness and the proper existence still exists in our society? Why, even if we want to go beyond the demand of happiness, we still end up within the demand of happiness, even if we understand that there is something wrong with the emphasis on the demand to be happy, while we still end up within the same demand to be happy? Why is this happening? And Sorensen suggests that we should look for roots of this equation of happiness and health, psychological health, in Christianity. Precisely, he claims that if before society was secularized, people expected that they will be there is going to be salvation. There are people who are leading you towards this salvation. Those people are normally something to do with the church apparatus, and so they lead you heaven, to salvation. And in Christianity, it's also simplification, but we can claim, and Sorensen claims that there was this equation of suffering with a sin. So humans are initially sinful. This is why they suffer. And a church kind of leads you to the salvation from sin and from suffering that you deserve, leads you somewhere where there's going to be no suffering. And this is how authority of church, one of the mechanisms how it imposes itself. But for modern people, secular people, we kind of transformed this idea into the idea of psychological health. So sin and suffering connected with sin turned to us into deviation of mental health. And now instead of those pastors, instead of ministers, the apparatus of church, we have apparatus of psychotherapy, those experts who lead us towards the salvation within this life, within life on earth, promising us the happy life that we can build in this life, not without need to wait for heaven. And this is basically very easy still, even though we claim we're so smart and that we are all secular, but we still base our thinking, our worldview on this simplified scheme that there is hell, suffering, and the white one, opposite to it, is heaven, absence of suffering, and we kind of lead our way to towards the heaven. Just this heaven is not somewhere outside this earthly life, but it's kind of, it's seen as the salvation within this life. And those people who lead us towards this salvation are psychotherapists and other kind of experts and scientists who see their goal to bring us eternal absence of suffering. And here we can talk about Foucault, pastoral power. Pastoral power is Foucault's term to describe a mode of power of contemporary society. His concept of biopower is more well known, but for this goal here, I think concept of pastoral power will work better. You remember, biopower is a power that tries to administrate biological life of citizens. And tries to make them healthier and live longer and reproduce in a proper way. But pastoral power is first of all, it's democratic power. It's not sovereign power anymore, not the power of king. It describes democratic power, and it still has the roots of those Christian roots. It exists in contemporary society, and Christian roots, secularized one, they are manifested in the phenomena of care. So those who articulate this power, they articulate it through care, not by imposing, by oppressing, although we might claim that care is, in this way, it might be even more oppressive because it's based on trust. You trust someone who takes care of you, and you let them impose certain ideas on you because it's under the pretext of care. And pastor was the one in Christianity, was the one who guides to salvation, prescribed, and by this, because under the pretext of guiding to salvation, it prescribes laws and it teaches the truth, because he is good. And same principle for Foucault works in more contemporary society with all the expert and embodiment. One of the embodiment of the pastoral power is medical apparatus, people who take care of us and whom we trust. And therefore they are the instance of truth. They know what is healthy. They are like those messiahs who used to lead us towards salvation. Now they lead us towards health, healthy state of psyche, healthy state of body. And by this, they prescribe what is health and what the healthy, proper human is supposed to look like. Foucault saw psychotherapists, psychoanalysts, precisely Freud, as the embodiment of those pastors, as a new type of pastors, for many reasons that we can think of. For example, Freud, we will talk about this more at the end of the lecture. So with the psychoanalyst, it still guides you. It provides care. We do associate psychotherapy with care. It listens to you. And for Foucault, a very important aspect of psychoanalysis is that it works as a confession. So you do confess, and when you confess to your doctor or to psychotherapist, you basically, there is a demand on you to tell the truth so you could be helped, right? So you have to trust someone who is taking care of you, and pastor or psychoanalyst has the right, has the authority to tell the truth. So they basically are those who interpret what is happening with you, because they're taking care of you, and they are the expert whom you will ask what to do, right? So, this is the very similar apparatus to apparatus of church, because church proclaimed that there is no salvation outside of church. Therefore, you have to come to us. We will help you. And similar thing with psychotherapy and with psychology. And it's not that there are evil psychologists who are imposing certain knowledge on poor people who have to emancipate themselves from psychotherapy. It's not that, it's internalized, right? This is the way we think. And in my view, psychotherapists themselves suffer even more than people whom they impose this idea to of happiness, because there is demand of them to be happy. And if you are unhappy, it's even worse gulag, because if you are unhappy as a normal person, it's like, fine, you can go to psychotherapist. But what if you are a psychotherapist, especially during the pandemic, when the same thing is happening to you, plus you're supposed to be, you're supposed to know how to deal with it. You're supposed to know how to lead healthy, happy, positive life. And it looks also creepy, even if you do look happy. It's not making things better. So it's not that there are evil psychotherapists or a group of psychotherapists. They are kind of also might be seen as victims of some structure of society that exists today. And this also is connected to the need of Messiah, right? Of the need of someone who will come and save us, someone who we're ready to trust because they promise to save us. Like, this is how church works, because we want salvation, we're fed up with this suffering, and we believe in anything that at least after this life, someone know how to be, how to get rid of earthly suffering. And basically, same need we are articulating now. We need someone, we need the authority of someone who will know how to get rid of this suffering. And we are ready to trust them, to entrust them ourselves if they promise us that they at least know what a healthy, proper human look like, and will help us to know the way how to turn ourselves into this proper humans. And the thing is that psychotherapists don't know, but they have to play this role. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And they might sometimes even play this role for themselves, like believing that they know something, that they are those authorities. And the concept of therapeutic society is basically what describes something similar to Foucault pastoral power. It was a concept that Philip Rieff introduced in his book 1966, although it is claimed that maybe Suzanne Sontag wrote this text and he presented it as his own. So his idea was, he actually saw and analyzed the switch from religious society, more moral society, to psychological society or therapeutic society. And for him, therapeutic society where psychology came to replace religion, within it, psychotherapy, psychology is represented as functions as a substitution, easy substitution of religion. There are many similarities, but it's kind of a secular version of religion. So, and we have to be careful with Reeve because he was conservative. He is quite a conservative thinking. So the mood of his writing is that we have to come back to more moral society. And you can see it from here that we used to want to be saved. We used to want to be moral human, and we were ready to suffer. We didn't care about how we feel that much, not us, people before us. And now we are those terrible psychological humans who just want to be pleased, who worry the most about how they feel, that they feel suffering. They don't worry that much about moral values, but they just want to be pleased. They don't want to suffer. And he criticized it for several reasons. He prefers morality, and morality doesn't work. So there is no those great humans. They don't exist anymore who don't care how they feel, who don't care about some great moral ideas. They only care if they're suffering, and if something slightly wrong is happening with them, they rush to psychotherapists to help them. They are overly concentrated on themselves. And we will discuss it more when we'll talk about therapeutic education, because education, university, is also therapeutic now. So this was his criticism, that the society as such has turned into the office of a psychotherapist, right? That each of us is potentially a client of psychotherapy. Potentially there is something wrong with each of us. And the psychotherapists are experts to say what is healthy and what is unhealthy. And we know that now when we build in relationship with each other, there is this, if you don't go to real psychotherapists, it is presumed that a healthy relationship, they kind of involve at least the invisible authority of a psychotherapist. So the authority, we know that it's in our mind. It's not that someone is imposing it on us, that we have the imaginary psychotherapist within us who is authorized to judge, is it healthy, is it unhealthy? Kind of the pop psychology within our heads. And this is what guides us from inside. This is our substitution of religion, our substitution of God, who it used to be possible to talk to and ask what is right and what is wrong. Now we have imaginary psychologists, which is quite much better, more materialistic substance, but still functions in a quite similar way. With Freud, according to Reeve, everything starts with psychoanalysis. And it's true that within psychoanalysis, the figure of Freud as such, we can find a lot of what I was just talking to, that he is presenting himself as a messiah. He's still a moral religious figure, although he's opposed to religion. For example, he, in his correspondence with Pfister, and Oscar Pfister is Protestant minister, he basically claimed that they want to come to the same objectives for pure humanity, Minister and Freud. And Pfister was interested how to combine his pastoral work with the psychotherapy work. And Freud was interested in that. Maybe because Freud wanted to secure functioning of psychoanalysis where he could, even if it's church. Maybe it was some kind of plan to play that he doesn't mind psychoanalysis to be mixed with religion. But actually they do, according to Foucault, they do go together pretty well and they do resemble each other. And also Freud, in this same correspondence, he presents himself as his misanthropic views. He, for example, call people trash here. And this is the position of Messiah, right? The position of someone who is good, moral, and same as Pfister, because he's a minister, and they together discuss that humans are trash, and they deviate from this moral ideal, which here is associated with health, and that the goal that they share is to help those people. With with the same in the same correspondence, he would later claim that psychoanalysis shouldn't be part or associated with church and with religion and with medicine. So basically, Freud wanted psychoanalysis to be something separate from both religion and medicine, the apparatus of medicine. So psychoanalysts shouldn't be doctors and should not be priests, but he still put it within the form that they have to heal souls, that they have to save souls, just in the same language church would articulate, but for Freud, it should be something not mixed with the medicine. He didn't like the idea of medicine to become the part of this apparatus because it's only interested in treatment, right? It's not interested in research of what is human psyche as such. He claimed quite cynically that he is not interested in therapy at all. And as a psychoanalyst, he does it for two reasons: to understand the unconscious, that is research, and to make money, right? So it just meaning that it was just presented as a therapy. And according to Ferenczi, in his clinical diary, Freud claimed that the therapy with neurotics, those are the main people who Freud worked with, it might not work at all, and they are only good to support them financially, while psychoanalysis as psychotherapy might be worthless. And if we consider this, and now we see to what extent the apparatus of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis have grown, which is quite surprising, right? We still, even if it doesn't work, we kind of believe that it works because at least we have this belief. Freud also criticized Ferenczi because when he went to America, according to Freud, he started to be detached from the real psychoanalysis because he started to be too optimistic. And Freud criticized what psychoanalysis started to turn in America under the pressure of those positive, optimistic worldview, that it just transformed, that it took the main out of psychoanalysis and then just transformed it into the eclectic kind of treatment. It's exactly the opposite of Freud, what Freud wanted it to be. And yeah, with Freud, we can claim that he was also sometimes, but mostly in tune with the idea that people want to be happy, that it's what we associate with healthiness. But at the same time, he's quite pessimistic. And at the same time, he recognizes that suffering is irreducible. So he's, what we will discuss at the end, quite a depressive realist. And so he understands that Schopenhauer, as Schopenhauer already pointed out, life on Earth is suffering. And that there are kinds of suffering that are irreducible, that we can't get rid of. And there is nothing that psychotherapy can do. And for Freud, the most important one is that psychotherapists have to make people conscious of this hell. He suggests later that conscious for this hell so they can make their life better, but I like to end here, that just make conscious of this hell, and that's all. So there are two opposite Freud, the one who is still a messiah, presents himself as a messiah, the one who leads sinful masses somewhere and towards happiness and elevation of their suffering. But there is also disillusioned Freud, who understand that it's not possible and who understand that it just doesn't work that way. And yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is that for me, Mappa Bridge as the image of society, as the image of as the metaphor of our society and a metaphor of a bridge that brings us together, maybe we should keep it as a bridge of death, meaning not just letting people to commit suicide wherever they want. It's just something else. It's the opposite of this demand to be happy, because it doesn't work. We think that we are connecting through this demand to be happy, but for real, it just works as distancing from each other. Because when we demand from others to be happy, not to be sad, we don't see them, right? They're just getting rid of them, not to under the pretext of care, but this is a questionable care. We just justify that we don't want to hear their sadness, that we stigmatize their suffering, that we think that they are sick people who need to be healed. So it doesn't work. With the demand, it might not work, that this demand to be happy might not work as the proper connection to each other. And maybe keeping the bridge of death as a prototype of our society, meaning that we are all on this earth, and there's nothing except for this earth. We're all going to die. No one is immortal. Some people are immoral. I'm Freud. And it's recognizing it, that only us, only on this earth, that we're going to die, that we are suffering, that this earth is hell, there is this suffering, and there is no heaven at all, neither in this life, nor in the life after earthly life. And there are no messiahs, like not the psychologists, not psychotherapists, nor pastors. No one knows what is the proper human. No one knows how to get rid of suffering. No one knows what the proper human is supposed to look like. So this bridge of death that stays the bridge of death maybe is the way to properly connect to each other, which is quite hard, because I was saying that, and existential philosophers are saying that it's hard to bear this anxiety that is at the core of us, our basic suffering. But to my view, it's even harder to bear someone else's suffering, especially when someone who is dear to you is suffering. You might even want to experience this suffering instead of them, just to not to see them suffering. So it is quite hard to accept that others are suffering. It is quite hard to hear they are the voice of their sadness. Therefore, we kind of try to preserve ourselves from it. But by preserving it, by demanding to silence the voice of sadness, we don't see the core of human. We don't see, since according to the existential philosophers, it is the core of human being. We don't see human being as such, and we therefore are unable to build those proper human relationship where we recognize each other, and where the instance where we can actually build the connections with each other. And I'm not opposed to therapeutic society, as Reef does, because he is conservative and because he prefers to go back somewhere to more moral society. But I don't think it's possible, and I think it's even worse to go back to religious moral society. It's quite oppressive. It presupposes patriarchy, for example, which is really moral within the conservative worldview. So it's not better, but we have what we have. We can't get rid of this therapeutic and psychological thinking that we have. And it works as something that connects us now. It connects us on a level of relationship. This is our inner psychotherapist. And it actually works that we believe that psychotherapists are Messiah who will help us. At least this belief help us to, we have this hope that someone knows what to do, and it makes it easier to do something. They believe in experts. I just think that it would be maybe better to preserve this therapeutic society, but not to stigmatize sadness and not to escape from this sadness. and to maybe realize more clearly that there are no those messiahs. And this will include psychotherapists, because I think they are very stigmatized people. They are the most excluded from actual human communication, although they are those who listen to us. They are those in contemporary society, they are those who provide care, and their voice is silence. They just listen. And they listen in a weird way. They might pretend to listen because they might objectify you and give you the diagnosis, and it's not listening, but we still feel it as a care, because at least we have this. You know, if you feel sad, if you're depressed, within your relationship, you might be sent to and in your workplace, you might be sent, try to tell someone you're depressed or suicidal, you know, automatically you'll be sent to psychotherapist, because there is something wrong with you, and this is the instance who can take proper care of you and turn you into a proper human, and then you'll be prepared to come back to human relationship with the one you love, or in your workplace or your university. So we kind of build society in that way, in transforming people into unsuffering people through the apparatus of psychotherapy who is taking care. But maybe, but for real, they're not taking care. They're just making you an object and kind of changing you in a required direction. But maybe if we don't stigmatize those this suffering, like depression and suicidal mood, we'll be able to build maybe different kind of human relationship, more direct one. Maybe it will involve, and we might call it being psychotherapist, each person to each person, since we already have this mindset that frames everything into the apparatus of psychotherapy. This is the categories we think with. So maybe we'll make it more therapeutic society, not less, not hierarchical with those authorities, just be, but more direct one, more deep one in a way.